The night fog crept along the empty streets. I stood at the bus stop, feeling the cold seep through my clothes. It was a strange feeling, as if I had ended up in a city that wasn't mine. Though the signs, the streetlights, and even the smell of the asphalt were familiar, the headlights emerged from the darkness, blinding me for a moment. The bus, old, battered, black as sin. It approached silently like a ghost. The doors opened with a faint hiss. A man in a long coat sat in the driver's seat. His face was in shadow, but I saw the gleam of his eyes, deep, dark, filled with some ancient, weary knowledge. "Ready for the journey?" he asked. "Where to?" I replied. "Across the river. The fare is one memory. Choose what you can let go." I laughed. I thought it was some strange late-night joke, but my legs carried me inside. The bus was empty. The seats were old, worn, but clean. The windows were covered in a thick layer of grime. Inside it smelled of wet earth and decaying leaves. I walked down the aisle and chose a seat by the window. The doors slammed shut, and the bus moved. We drove through streets I didn't recognize. The houses seemed abandoned, no lights, no people, only grey facades, dark alleys, rusted signs. "Memory," the driver spoke again. "Without it, the journey is impossible," I thought. Which memory should I give? Something insignificant, a trinket? I remembered when I once lost an old lighter. I would give up that memory without regret. I thought about it and felt a slight jolt. Something left my mind, painlessly, like a splinter being pulled out. But the bus continued moving. "Not enough," the driver said. "It needs to be something more precious." My heart tightened. I didn't know what exactly he wanted. I didn't want to part with something important. I remembered my first love, how she laughed on a summer evening, how her hair smelled. Sadness gripped my chest. But gritting my teeth, I thought, take it. The jolt was stronger, almost painful. I flinched. And then I realized I barely remembered her face. We kept driving. The world outside the window became increasingly foreign. The houses disappeared. In their place, a grey field scattered with black trees, leafless. "More," the driver said. But I started, but realized he wasn't asking. I desperately tried to recall. Childhood, my mother, the first fight, the first victory, the first loss. Each memory I gave tore me apart inside, and the more I gave, the more I lost myself. I no longer remembered why I got on this bus. I didn't remember my name. When the bus stopped, I stood up and got off. Before me stretched a black river, and above it an arching bridge of rusty metal. Around me, not a sound, not a soul. "Go," said Charon. "But what about going back?" I croaked. The driver silently closed the doors. The bus disappeared into the fog as if it had never been. I was left alone, with emptiness in my heart and a foreign world before me. The fog thickened over the streets, hiding empty houses and rusty streetlights in its white maw. The bus creaked like an old ship in a storm when Charon stopped at an unremarkable stop on the edge of the city. He was waiting for a passenger. It was always like this. Someone would lose their way, someone would lose themselves and find their way to him. They didn't need to be called. They came on their own when the time arrived. But today was different. He saw the child. The boy stood, clutching a worn teddy bear to his chest. His hair was wet from the fog, his face pale and frightened. Charon frowned. He could sense them all, those who had died, those who had crossed the boundary. They were dark shadows in his perception. But this boy, he glowed. He was not yet dead. Charon slowly opened the doors. The boy looked up. "You're lost," Charon said softly, in a voice that seemed to echo through centuries of silence. The boy nodded silently. His lips trembled. He stepped inside. Charon closed the doors. The bus moved. Sitting at the wheel, Charon glanced furtively in the mirror. The boy sat, hugging his bear, staring out the window with a sad, doomed expression. "Fair," Charon said mechanically. He expected to hear a response, a name, a memory, a prayer. But the child only pressed the toy tighter to himself. Then Charon felt something strange inside, sharp, alive, regret. He knew what would happen next. He would take from the boy the most precious thing, perhaps a memory of his mother, of the first warm morning, the smell of pie in the kitchen, and the boy, emptied, would lose the last thread connecting him to life. "This is the way it is," Charon reminded himself, but his hand didn't rise. He slowed the bus. The fog outside the windows thickened, swallowing the streets and buildings. Charon knew there was little time left. If he didn't do his job now, others would notice. Those who kept watch over the order of the rivers. He had to decide. Now. The choice made once could never be undone. Charon slowed the bus to a complete stop. The engine sighed and fell silent. The fog outside the window thickened, becoming viscous, heavy, almost tangible. The world seemed to hold its breath. The boy looked up at Charon. In his eyes swam a quiet, silent question. What now? Charon turned away, not wanting to see that gaze. He wasn't supposed to stop, under no circumstances. That was the deal. But for the first time in all the endless centuries, he took a step aside. And the river that had always flowed quietly and invisibly at the edge of reality, answered. The first sound was barely perceptible, a rustle, as if dry leaves were rolling over the asphalt. Then a heavy scratching against the side of the bus. And finally, a low hum, like the herald of a storm. Charon felt a chill run down his spine. They had come. The Guardians. Shapeless silhouettes outside the bus window began to condense. Their faces were blank, as if carved from grey stone. No eyes, no mouth, only whirlpools of emptiness. They did not speak. They simply existed. Their existence alone was a sentence. Charon knew if they entered the bus, the boy would be taken. No trial, no chance. And something worse than oblivion awaited him. He darted to the door, locked it with an old iron bolt, clicking the latch. His fingers trembled. "Stay close," he threw to the boy. The boy, clutching his bear, slid off the seat and grabbed the hem of Charon's coat. The scratching grew louder. The Guardians were now tapping on the windows, quietly, persistently. The bus trembled like a frightened animal. One of them, the tallest, reached out, and the glass whitened with frost where his fingers touched the surface. Time was running out. Charon sprang into action, started the engine. The bus lurched forward. It raced down streets that changed before his eyes. Houses vanished, the asphalt cracked, trees twisted into knots. And all the while Charon could feel their pursuit shadows crawling after the bus, almost not touching the ground. "Will they catch us?" the boy asked quietly. Charon threw him a glance. His heart, that same ancient, half-forgotten one, clenched with pain. No, he lied, because he knew the truth. They wouldn't stop. They didn't need him. They didn't need the child. They needed the very idea of freedom that he had dared to bring into being. The bus veered out of the familiar streets into a strange space. Everything was different here. The roads were cracked and broken like dry skin. The streetlights were crooked, casting a deathly blue light. The buildings stood as semi-transparent silhouettes, like ghosts of something that had once been here. This was the Wasteland, a zone between worlds, where both the living and the dead lost their names, where the Guardians lost part of their power but never vanished completely. Charon slowed down. The bus behaved strangely, as if resisting the very air, thick, sticky, filled with the echoes of foreign voices. The boy sat quietly, still clutching the teddy bear. "Where are we?" he finally asked in a whisper. "Where they can't grab us right away," Charon replied, his voice hoarse. But Charon knew they wouldn't last long here. The wasteland attracted other creatures, no less dangerous than the Guardians. They stopped near a half-destroyed building, once a theatre, now just a shadow, cracked and embedded in the earth. Charon got up from the driver's seat, clicked the door lock, and cautiously peeked outside. No one. He took the boy's hand. "Stay close. Don't get lost here." They entered. Inside it was dark, and it smelled of dampness and iron. On the broken seats sat strange figures, humans, but not quite. Their faces were blurred, like poorly focused photographs. Some muttered to themselves, others just stared into the void. These were the runaways, those who, like Charon now, had broken the rules of the transition. They were stuck here forever. As soon as Charon and the boy entered, several heads turned toward them. There was no friendliness in their gazes. "Charon," one of the figures whispered, its voice like the rusty screech of metal. Charon tightened his grip on the boy's hand. He knew many here hated the ferryman. To some he had become a symbol of their loss, to others a traitor, but he could not stop now. "I need the ferryman of the depths," Charon said loudly into the darkness. At first, silence, then movement in the shadows. One of the figures stood up, swaying, and approached. It was an old man in a torn coat, his face scarred with a network of thin scars. "You know what you're asking for," he rasped. "Those who go to the depths don't return the same." "I need a way back," Charon replied. The old man smirked. "The price will be higher than you can imagine." Charon nodded. He had already made his choice, a long time ago. The shadows in the theatre stirred. In the distance, beyond the shattered windows, a new fog gathered, thick, black. The Guardians were approaching. Charon and the boy had minutes left, and only one direction, down into the very heart of the forgotten depths of the city. The old man silently led them ahead. He walked strangely, as if his legs were heavy, as though each step drained his strength. Charon had to bend down to follow him through the narrow backstage passage. The air there was thick and sticky. It smelled of mildew, earth, and something else, ancient, forgotten. The boy tightly held Charon's hand. His small fingers trembled, but he didn't let go. The old man descended a stone staircase that led somewhere into the darkness beneath the building. "What is this place?" the boy whispered. "A transition," Charon replied, "the oldest one." The staircase ended at a massive iron door. Strange symbols were hammered into its metal, glowing faintly with blue light. The old man stopped. "From here you're on your own," he rasped. Charon nodded. The old man vanished into the shadows as if he had never been there. Charon pulled on the rusty handle. The door reluctantly opened with a low groan. Behind it, an endless tunnel leading into a black, ringing silence. The walls of the tunnel were smooth, as if carved by water or time. The steps echoed somewhere below, as though an entire world waited beneath. Charon took a deep breath. "Are you ready?" he asked the boy. The boy nodded, still clutching the bear. They entered. The tunnel was alive. Charon felt the walls pulse with barely perceptible rhythms. Sometimes he thought he heard whispers, not words but emotions, fear, sorrow, guilt. They walked for a long time, or perhaps only a few minutes. In the depths, time didn't matter. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vast hall. In the center stood a mirror. Not an ordinary mirror. Its surface was liquid like mercury and reflected not their bodies but their memories. Charon saw himself, young, alive, the man he was before he became the ferryman. And next to him, the boy, reflected not in the present but in the future, grown, strong but with empty eyes. It was a warning. If they went further, the boy would never be the same. If they stayed, the Guardians would find them. Charon approached the mirror. On its surface a path appeared, a thin trail leading through the grey wastelands to the river of life. But beside it, a second image emerged, a deep abyss into which one could jump. The leap was a chance for the boy to return to life. But Charon would have to remain, the price for salvation. He understood it all. The river demanded an equal exchange, and now Charon had to decide, allow the boy to stay dead, or become part of the depths forever. A hum echoed behind them. The Guardians were close. The boy clung to him. "I'm scared," he whispered. Charon closed his eyes. He knew the decision had already been made. The thin path for the boy, the abyss for him. Picking the boy up, Charon stepped toward the mirror. The boy disappeared in a blinding flash of light, dissolving into the road to life, and Charon remained, standing before the abyss. He removed his hat and took the final step forward. By the time the Guardians stormed into the hall, it was already too late. The bus, left by Charon on the surface, vanished with him, and in the abandoned theatre, only the stuffed toy remained, the bear the boy had clutched until the very end. Years passed. The boy, saved that night, grew up. He hardly remembered anything about the strange bus, the fog, or the frightening transition. Only sometimes did he dream strange dreams, iron doors, long shadows, and a man in a hat who held his hand. These dreams didn't scare him. They reminded him of something important. He became a surgeon. He worked in the intensive care unit, where others gave up. His hands were steady, his heart resilient. He saved lives where hope was almost gone. Sometimes he thought that he lived not only for himself. Sometimes it seemed that somewhere in the thick fog, someone faceless was watching him. But he never looked back. He kept moving forward. And somewhere beyond the boundary of the world, beyond the realm that the living could see, the bus appeared again from the fog. Black, old, creaking. In the driver's seat sat Charon, not the Charon who once broke the rules for a child. This Charon was different. He had forgotten his name. He had forgotten why he had once made that choice. He had forgotten warmth, fear, regret. His memory had been taken from him. They had taken everything. Now he was just a shadow, just a cold instrument. The bus doors hissed open. At the bus stop stood a young woman. In her arms was a 6-month-old baby, wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes were full of tears. She didn't understand where she had ended up. Charon looked at her with empty, dark eyes. No sympathy, no pain, nothing. "Payment," he said in a colourless voice. The woman sobbed. "Please, he's too young." Charon remained silent. The emptiness in his chest did not echo with any sound. The woman trembled, holding the baby tighter. And then Charon raised his hand. A thin wave passed between them. He took their memories, all of them, to the last one. The woman no longer remembered who she was. The baby no longer knew even the warmth of her embrace. They silently stepped into the bus. The doors slammed shut. The bus plunged into the fog, dissolving into the soundless void. And Charon, as cold as stone, drove them through the river of oblivion, never once glancing at them. He no longer asked questions. He simply drove.